Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Berwyn Police Department and our Mayor, Robert Lavero, welcome. Unfortunately, due to a family commitment, the Mayor regretfully isn't able to be here tonight. We'd like to thank Morton West High School Board of Education for the use of the auditorium, Josh McMahon, Principal, Christy Kavanaugh, Assistant Principal at Morton West, for their support in promoting this event. Also, the Morton West Theater Department. Thank you very much. We also like to thank Superintendent Dr. Carmen Ayala, School District 98 for her support in providing live Spanish translation tonight as well as Superintendent Mary Havis, School District 100 for their support. Also, Division Commander Frank Samaglia and Manager of Emergency Communications Wayne Sidor. Thank you very much. Tonight we have some city officials present as well, and also a special guest I'd like to recognize. We have here tonight Chief Michael Samaglia. We have, I believe, Division Commanders Manfredini and O'Halloran. We also have 6th Ward Alderman Alicia Ruiz. Thank you. And we also have community activist Andrew Holmes here this evening. He has been a supporter of our community. He has been a supporter of our community and has assisted the Berwyn Police Department in a few of our major investigations. I was personally involved with Mr. Holmes, so he was a tremendous asset to our department. Thank you, Mr. Holmes. 4 years ago, we began a series of prevention through education presentations, goals that you leave the presentation with knowledge to help you or someone you might know, as well as to inspire you to get involved. In choosing tonight's topic, child sex trafficking, we received such comments such as, "That's a dark topic." Well, it is, but unfortunately it does exist. Bringing light into this darkness is the organization Selah Freedom, and we are very happy to have them with us tonight. Presenting tonight, our guest speaker is Elizabeth Melendez Fisher. She is our co-founder and president of CEO Selah Freedom, national nonprofit to end sex trafficking and sexual exploitation. Under Fisher's direction, Freedom Selah offers 12-month residential recovery programs, at-risk teen prevention programs, and outreach to survivors. Recently honored by the state of Florida for helping set state standards for sex trafficking, providers a testimony to their credibility and success. She co-hosts Selah Freedom TV show, A Closer Look with Selah Freedom on METV. A 2014 recipient of the prestigious Tampa Bay Businesswoman of the Year Award for nonprofit category. Featured in the Herald Times, Herald Tribune, Tampa Times, Pioneer Press, Chicago Woman Magazine, SRQ Magazine, WGN TV and radio, ABC, Fox, NBC News, MeTV, WBEZ Chicago. She's a graduate of Southern Illinois University and received a Bachelor's of Arts in Communications before earning her Master's in Clinical Psychology. Also with Elizabeth Fisher is Noelle Viard. She's an expert awareness coordinator with CSE. We had also expected to have another guest speaker, Judge Kendall, but unfortunately she is unable to make it here tonight. She had a last-minute court issue. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth Fisher.
Thank you. So thank you guys for coming tonight, and I'd like to give another round of applause to all of law enforcement that's here tonight. It is an honor to be here to help you. Thank you. I have with me tonight, because we wanted to sort of give you a full understanding, like start at the beginning, help you understand how this even happens, you know, what it looks like in your own backyard, what it looks like right here. So we're going to help you really get that. I have with me that's going to be joining me in speaking, an expert in the area of sex trafficking and brain and trauma resolution for people that do have abuse happen and Traumatic Experiences, Dr. Jason Quintal. We call him Dr. Q. And with me is my outreach and awareness coordinator, who is also serving as our law enforcement liaison and trains all over Chicagoland with FBI, not only Cook County State's Attorney, U.S. Attorney, and we work closely with Sheriff Dart's office as well, and that is Miss Noelle Viard. But I wanted to sort of start by helping you understand. So my name is Elizabeth Melendez Fisher. First generation, my dad's from Puerto Rico and came over when he was a teen. All of his family came over not speaking English, 15, 14, 13, and 11, him and his sisters. And he had to enroll his sisters in school and got a really sweet principal that took him under his wing and helped them all find the right grades to start, to be comfortable. And my family, my dad's family, his parents, always tried to look like they didn't come straight from Puerto Rico. They wanted to sort of be like, acclimate and blend. And in that, they sacrificed a lot of the culture of, we grew up with all the awesome, food and everything, and then it just sort of, we lost it over time. They didn't teach any of us to speak Spanish. They were really wanting to be American and seen as like everyone else. And in that, I grew up in a family that also didn't want to talk about what was happening that was maybe uncomfortable or not right. And if anything went wrong, any abuse, because there was abuse, there was sexual abuse, there was a lot of different things going on that nobody spoke about. And as a kid, you knew things were going on, and you just, why isn't anyone talking about it? So I grew up in a world of acting as if, and when I say that, it's acting as if everything's okay, when in reality it's not okay. You don't feel okay always on the inside. So as a kid who learned how to, fake it till you make it, I became really good at that, playing different roles. But along the way, I had my own encounter with sexual abuse, and that fake it till you make it really makes you do things that make you keep faking it and covering and hiding. And maybe that's why you start doing drugs, or maybe that's why you get too promiscuous, or maybe that's why you go down this road. And it's really interesting coming from a personal perspective of really not wanting to let your family down and trying to hide some stuff, the roads it takes you down. So that's sort of just the background of why. Because people are like, man, over the last 6 years, you have kicked butt growing this organization. But when I found out what sex trafficking was, I didn't know that it really drilled all the way down to this most basic family secret, really. So I always say, I did a TED Talk, and I basically said there's one root cause of sex trafficking in America, and it's preventable. It's sexual abuse. It's childhood sexual abuse. They say statistically 92% of survivors of sex trafficking were abused as kids. We've worked with, just last year alone, 1,800 survivors. They were all sexually abused as kids. All of them. And it's just an interesting fact, because how many of you, when you hear sex trafficking, it's much more comfortable to think Asia, right? Over there, Cambodia, somebody else's problem, but not us, right? And in those countries, it's so often explained as, the parents didn't have money, they didn't know any better, somebody told them they could help their children, they wanted to believe them, and they just knew they couldn't do any better for them. But in America, and what I want you guys to get, and what we're here for today, is to help you see what you might not be seeing. Because it's everywhere, and it's in everybody's backyard, and the stats today, these are the reported. Am I echoey, or are you hearing me okay? You're good? Okay. Echoey. Wow. So, the stats that are reported today are 1 out of 3 little girls are sexually abused, and 1 out of 5 little boys. I don't care where you live. You could live in the North Shore, you could live in Naperville, you could live on the south side of Chicago, 1 out of 3 little girls statistically is reported to be sexually abused, and 1 out of 5 little boys. What we know is reported numbers are way lower than actually what's happening. And I almost don't meet anyone anymore that hasn't had some encounter with some sort of abuse while they were growing up. Maybe not, it's not always ongoing, but someone's had a touch. So for me, when I learned, because I'm from Chicago, I'm born and raised here. I've only been to Florida 8 years. And when I heard that sex trafficking is actually happening to our own American kids, and they're being bought and sold right here on our own streets, and they're being bought by our own people, I'm like, what? It blew my mind in the grid of what I was anticipating and thinking. And so when I learned more about it, and I was told the reason is this little story. This is the why, and this is the why I'm in it, and this is the reason I will come and speak any evening, any day, anywhere to raise awareness, because it's not what we all think. So if 1 out of 3 little girls is being sexually abused, we know from what you've heard in life that most people are abused by somebody they know, right? So it's a family member, it's a teacher, it's a coach, and you really, if it starts young, like in our program, the majority of the girls started being abused under 6 years old. 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, start being abused, and really learn to keep a secret. And when you're that little and you are not knowing what's right and what's wrong, but it's all you're being raised with, you're very confused. So you keep that secret, and you learn how to sort of just show up, and you don't really know any different. And statistically, what we learned for the girls that end up needing our help, and what we're partnering with law enforcement and state's attorney and everyone to do, is they've been in that abuse year after year after year. So we're not talking about the once an uncle got me, and man, I never saw him again. But ours are chronic. Like one little girl in our program, she said, she was older by the time she got with us, but she said, at 11 years old, I just thought, whatever is on the streets, whatever's out there, it's got to be better than what happens in my bedroom every night with my dad and my brothers. And she ran away looking for freedom. She's like, anything's got to be better. And the stats tell us that when our own kids run away from home on any street in America, within 48 hours, 80% of them will be approached by a trafficker, call it a pimp, call it whatever you want, a moneymaker off of our kids, predator, and all he has to say is, are you hungry? I bet you might need a place to stay tonight. I bet your parents didn't know how to love you. I'll love you. That's it. And then they will slowly get them a little drug, get hooked on drugs, so that they become a little dependent. And then, you know what the stats are of what happens to that kid? So running away, looking for safety, within 48 hours, luring, coercion, somebody gets them to follow them. Within 48 hours, they're in. They are sold. How many times do you think they're sold for sex a day? Any numbers? What? 60. 15 to 40 times a day. 60, probably some of them. But 15 to 40. And the average number, I just went to a national training, a national level VOCA, Victims of Crime Advocate training. The average number is 25. And when you talk to some of the girls that come out of this, they'll say, it was just as quick as I could get the guy out, the next guy came in. Because human trafficking is a $38 billion industry. And so, when you're looking from the highest level organized crime, all the way down to street gangs in every little town, they now know I can make way more money off of a girl than I can drugs if I get the right girl. I don't have to repurchase her. I just use her. And so that 15 to 40 times a day lasts typically 7 years. So you age progression, you fast forward that level of abuse of a 12-year-old hits the street, 7 years later she's 18, 19, law enforcement's like, we got all these prostitutes prostitutes. Not anymore though, right? Like now we know, like, wow, I gotta look at this differently. So when this all started back in 2010, 2011, when we really were in there with law enforcement on the ground, that's when laws started changing here in Chicago, laws started changing nationally. There's an organization here in town called CASE, Chicago Alliance Against Sexual Exploitation. They changed 6 laws in 6 years right here in Chicago. Chicago is leading the force in getting laws changed to get ahead of it, because there was a time when kids were arrested for, minor prostitution, or, they would get arrested for prostitution and misdemeanors, and so many misdemeanors equal to felony. And so when we started talking to law enforcement back in the day, they're like, originally, comments were things like, well, we don't have human trafficking. There's no people in cages. We don't have international. And then it's like, no, it looks like this. Have you ever seen, this girl with this? And different scenarios. They said, you know what, our jails are clogged. Our jails are clogged with 18 to 26-year-old girls. And we call them the lost girls. Like, no one wants them. We don't know what to do with them. We just keep rearresting and rearresting and rearresting. Are you saying you're now coming with a solution for that girl and for that population? And in the beginning, all of us, it was a learning curve, but I've never seen law enforcement get better with just like recognizing and changing. And, what's super fun about it now is that these girls, like at some of our graduations, the girls will say, I used to run when I saw law enforcement. Now I run to them because I know that they know that I'm a victim, and they protect me and they fight for me. And we are all over the place and partner with everybody that's doing it and training up and partnering with law enforcement. But I'm going to get more into the stories of the girls and different parts of it, but I just wanted to explain that side, that human trafficking, like who we work with, people also say, well, I bet everybody that makes it into your program that you finally rescue that's 19 and they've been on the streets forever, they're really probably just from this part of town. And in our programs, 80% of the girls that we have that come through FBI or sheriff or whatever, they're white. They're from middle class. They're from Naperville. I mean, so it's. I just want everybody to think that it's different than what you've been imagining. And if you start opening your mind, not only can you see the outcome of it differently, so a girl that's maybe already out on the street, or a girl that maybe she's in high school with one of your kids, and you're like, you hear the kids say, wow, she's a slut, she's a whore. And I was with one of my kid was a freshman at the time, and he had some 8th grade girls come over, and someone's like, oh, Susie's coming? She's such a slut. And I'm like, how old's Susie? They're like, she's in 8th grade. I'm like, what does that make her, 12? I'm like, there's no such thing as 8th grade slut. There's no such thing as a 7th grade slut. There's a little girl that probably has had someone steal something from her long before she ever would have chosen to give it up. And then she no longer knows how to say no. And then there's just people that take advantage of that. Like, how do we raise our boys to get that? How do we raise our girls to know they can speak about that? Because I know what happens having lived through it myself. You think, what does it matter? I have nothing left to keep. It doesn't matter. So just flipping the paradigm is really helpful. So what we're going to do as a team is we're just going to take turns sharing different stuff, and I'm going to have Noelle come up next, because she really works with our teen prevention program, and we would love to launch teen prevention programs in this community, because if you get ahead of it, you get into a brain of an 11-year-old, and you start talking about how to be an advocate, and how to look for what might be happening with your friends, and even if it's not happening with them, you empower a little girl on how to look again. And we have a program called Freedom for Teens, and it speaks to boys and girls about, because there's just a lot of misconceptions. And you guys wonder, pornography, everything sort of comes together to play into this. What do you think the average age a little boy is exposed to porn? 8? 8 years old. The average boy is exposed to porn at 8, and that fires off some stuff in the brain, like, whoa, what am I looking at? And meanwhile, you got iPhones. The recent study from the Academy Academy of Pediatrics, American Academy of Pediatrics, says that by age 4, 75% of children are given a smartphone. And most smartphones come preloaded, explicit. And you have to go into general settings, restrictions to turn off the explicit. Otherwise, all kinds of stuff. So we're like putting this stuff in our 4-year-old. By 8, you're starting people looking at it and getting addicted. Meanwhile, you have girls, like a little girl's story of being abused by her uncles, and then they took pictures of her and put her up on the internet. Meanwhile, little boys thinking, oh, girls are online, how fun. So it's no fault of a boy that he's not being told that that's not how it was intended to go, and that wasn't the path that little girl would have chosen. Like, it's just retraining, and it starts with us retraining our kids, retraining, it's just turning around what they're being fed. And there's another, we can come another time, we have something called sex, lies, and media. And it's real specific and gets really into social media and what to really look at. We're going to touch on it today. But I'm going to have Noelle come up, and she's going to take it and get a little bit more into what we do with our law enforcement and training and teens. So thank you, guys.
Hi, guys. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about technology in a minute, and as I'm preparing to talk, I have to set down my phone that is constantly glued to my hand. My name is Noelle Viard, and I work with Elizabeth at Selah Freedom. And part of my job is getting to come into communities and speak about what's going on and actually talk to a lot of families, a lot of young people about this issue, because part of the issue is that we're taught to think about it a certain way, and we hear about it a lot, maybe in movies or TV. How many have seen a movie or a television show that maybe talks about trafficking of some sort? Yeah, most of us, right? It's a really publicized concept, like the girl and she's thrown into the van and they race away and she's, traumatized and now she can't get free and someone comes racing after her to free her. And that connects with us. We think, oh my gosh, why is this happening and how do we help these girls? Well, the truth is that sex trafficking is happening. It's happening in our communities. It's happening in our schools. It's happening to people maybe down the road from us that we would never know. But it's actually very rarely happening like we see it in the movies. So very often we have this idea in our mind that trafficking looks like the girl being thrown into a van and whisked away. And that does happen. It's a very small percentage. But most of the time it looks like one girl starting to, like Elizabeth mentioned, unravel because of the years of abuse that she's experienced, and as she starts to fall apart and decide she can't handle that life anymore, she runs away. And when she runs away, she runs straight into the arms of someone who is communicating a value for her, but instead is there to harm her, right? So she's running away from that abuse, and she's saying, I can't handle it anymore. She finds a person who seems to be pretty cool, and that person says, hey, I can give you somewhere to stay tonight. And she's like, well, that would be work. That would be awesome. And so that relationship begins, and that person who originally offered her a hand up, right? We could all use a hand up. That person who originally offered her a hand up is actually going to pull her into that relationship and eventually abuse her and sell her. And so we see how this pattern works, that childhood story that Elizabeth talked about leads to someone being in this cycle over and over and over again where someone else has the control in the situation. I remember it being explained to me when someone said, have you ever had a friendship where you felt like they were a stronger personality, or that person seemed to really, have more control in the relationship? I'm like, yeah, I have this friend, she's super rude, and whenever I'm with her, I feel like she's in control. Now imagine that times a million, and that starts to begin to show us an example of what that relationship looks like between, somebody who's caught up in trafficking and the trafficker. So I live in Chicago, I'm from the suburbs, and a while back I got asked to speak at a school, and the school turned out to be literally across the street from my house, and they said, hey, we would really love people, what is trafficking, what does it look like, and how do you kind of be aware and protect yourself so that you don't get wrapped up in this. So I started sharing, and I'll share a little bit with you that now, and then I'll share a story of what happened there. We were sharing, and one of the kids, he keeps asking me, I share all these details, a lot of what Elizabeth shared, and he raises his hand. I'm like, oh great, a question. It's going to be awesome. So this kid asks a question, he goes, so how do you become a pimp? And I go, what? He's like, yeah, how does somebody grow up to become a pimp? And he kind of says with this gleam in his eyes, and I'm like, oh no, this kid has the wrong idea. And how many of us know, we live in Chicago, and that idea of oh, he's such a pimp, that phrase is thrown around. But the idea is actually, that a lot of these root causes of someone being trafficked or someone willing to traffic another person go down to, to the root cause of what Elizabeth is talking about our perception of each other, our perception of women and of boys, and boys' exposure to porn and women's exposure to porn. And I have this very interesting stat that's mind-boggling, but first I'll ask the question, how many of us here use social media? Okay, how many here have an Instagram? Oh, I'm guessing I'm the only one. No, there's some of us. How many use Facebook? What about Twitter? I actually don't use Twitter. What about Snapchat? Okay, so a lot of us use these social media sites. How many people here watch movies on Netflix? Me, every evening I watch something funny before bed. So there's actually this little stat, and it says that pornography gets more site visits on the internet than Netflix, Twitter, and Amazon combined. So think of Amazon, every little click where people buy something off the internet. Then think of Facebook and all the times you go on and check your status. And think of Twitter, where you're just checking that little feed. And think of Netflix, where you're streaming videos. Multiply that all together. Porn sites still get more traffic on the internet. And if we look at this as a nation, it's actually pretty easy to see why that can filter down, and it feeds our mind, right? It changes how we think about women, it changes what we think about sex, and it starts to create that foundation for people to grow up and have skewed ideas of what healthy relationships look like. So I was talking to this kid, he asked how to become a pimp. I kindly let him know that you would have to have not a lot of respect for your fellow human beings. And the teacher stops me, she says, hold on. She stops me, she addresses the class, and she says, guys, I need you to take this conversation seriously. Because what you think of as being an issue out there, somewhere, the neighborhood way over, the other side of Chicago, maybe the other side of the country, she said, is actually an issue in our community, and it's an issue in our school. She proceeded to tell me that in that school in Chicago, across from my house, 3 students, okay, and this school only goes up to 8th grade, so 7th and 8th graders were charged by the police for distributing what they considered child pornography. And this distribution of child pornography was actually simply one student who had a girlfriend, and he convinced her to send him pictures of herself without clothes. And he said, I really love you, we're so great together, hey, send me a picture. And it eventually got to the place where she sent him a photo, he showed all his friends, and then they began to text that photo to everyone in their school. Now, this girl who sent him the photo intended it only for his eyes, but many of us know what's on the internet or what's in your phone is not private, right? It can be distributed anywhere. And so she texted him that photo, he shows all his friends, and they begin to send it out, and then the police are notified, and they are charged with distributing child pornography. Okay? Now, these people who have been charged are also minors. But it's just this example of what some kid may think, it's like a harmless joke, right? I'm just texting photos, and it's funny, and a very serious issue. And so we want to bring awareness that texting photos of yourself to people is off limits. You don't know who that can be shared with. And at the same time, if you're somebody who's receiving that or spreading it around, that it can actually be a very serious offense. And so when we're talking to kids and we're talking to young people, and I know there's some young people here, we talk a lot about social media use. How does trafficking even happen? Well, a lot of times all it takes is that one interaction on the internet with someone you don't know, or someone you do know, or you think you know, or a friend of a friend who begins that communication. And when you think, oh, no one understands me, like I have that moment every week where I'm like, hey, people just don't get what I'm going through. And so I maybe reach out to a friend. Well, what if you don't have a friend to reach out to? What if you don't feel like you have someone you can trust? And so the one person who reaches out on the internet is like, hey, I can trust them. You start to share, and that person starts building a relationship with you over the internet, over Instagram or Facebook, Snapchat, and we feel like those things are real, right? That connection feels real. But that person is not always who they say they are. And so a lot of times we see girls who are caught up in trafficking in our prevention programs, and their stories, we start going, hey, have you ever heard of trafficking? They're like, no. And by the end of our 10 weeks, they're saying, oh, I think I was talking to a guy and it could have turned into something worse because I actually don't know who this is. And that relationship, once that person, has enough information, they can use it to manipulate another human being. And so we really want to make sure that we're being safe with how we conduct ourselves online as well as in person, right? And not putting information out there about where we are all the time and, oh, I'm all by myself at home tonight. Don't post that. Be safe with making sure that what's posted on the internet or what your kids post on the internet is not alerting people to, one, I'm alone or lonely, and two, where I am, and three, needing that connection always through the internet. So we want to be safe with that. So Elizabeth talked a little bit about Chicago, what's going on in this region, but Chicago is actually the top 5 city in the nation for sex trafficking. And a lot of us, when I heard that, I was shocked. And when I heard that trafficking was happening in my neighborhood, I was also shocked. And it wasn't until I started working for Selah Freedom that my eyes kind of popped open and I was like, oh, I think that girl I went to school with was actually being trafficked. I thought she was just posing for photos. Like, I thought she was just a model. I thought she was kind of like I don't really like her photos kind of model. But I thought she was just modeling. And turns out, now that I've been working and been aware of this, I can actually look back and see that storyline. And that the person, like Elizabeth said, the person I judge as just being trashy, her story is actually one of probably having experienced a lot of abuse as a child, probably trying to find a way out of it, and then the person who communicated to her, hey, I can help you, ending up, starting this cycle of abuse all over again. So I heard that trafficking was happening in my neighborhood and in Chicago, and I immediately decided I know exactly where it's happening. It's happening in all the bad neighborhoods. It's happening in Austin or North Lawndale or these, places that we are told are, pretty rough. And the truth is that it's actually happening in every neighborhood in Chicago. It's happening in the Loop. It's happening on the North Shore. It's happening on the South Side. It's happening in Berwyn. And this last weekend I was up in Grace Lake. Anybody heard of Grace Lake? It's 1,000,000 miles away. It felt like it when I was driving there. I drove up to Grace Lake and I was sitting in this training and I shared my little piece about Selah Freedom. And I had 2 guys, they work for Lake County State's Attorney's Office, and they're investigators, and they shared with me a shocking detail. They said, how many have heard of Backpage on the internet? It's kind of like Craigslist. Okay, so Backpage is where a lot of these sex trafficking ads take place. Rather than there just being a street in your town where a bunch of what we think of as prostitutes are standing, most of the time trafficking happens through the internet where an ad will be posted about a girl and it'll say, hey, here's this girl, and it shows photos of her, and somebody can come along and contact the number on that ad, and they will be set up with a girl, and they can purchase sex from her. And so we've talked about Backpage a lot in our jobs, and these guys have a program that can actually log how many ads are in their area. And so one of these gentlemen at the state's attorney's office stood up and he said, how many ads for sex would you guess are open right now in Grace Lake? And my job is to talk about this stuff. So I was like, I don't know, a couple thousand. And he said that there was actually, and I was thinking more like 200, 300. He said there are 2,000 ads open for trafficking simply in the town of Grace Lake. 2,000. From Backpage, Craigslist, all these other, internet sites, 2,000 simply in Grace Lake alone. And that's a suburb, and it's happening in the suburbs, but if you add Grace Lake to Berwyn to, Addison, you go out to Crystal Lake, and you go to the North Shore, add up all of those towns, and the numbers are astounding of what's going on. And so if I could just leave you guys with that piece, is that balance between, there's, it's happening here, it's affecting our young people. We need to be active and smart about what's going on. And as we grow in awareness, we can actually shift the tide of what is, occurring here. So I'm going to pass this back to you guys. But yeah, and I'll be here afterwards for questions as well, but I'll leave you with kind of that piece of how to hopefully stay aware and hopefully kind of take that next step.
So before I introduce Dr. Q, one thing, because there's so many, how many are here as a parent or a grandparent? And you care about protecting your kids, right? I do. 13-year-old, 16-year-old, thank God one just went to college. I'm like, done. Not really. But, so, I have a girlfriend. So my oldest daughter just went to college, and one of my friends, she runs an organization. It's somewhat similar to Selah, a little bit different, but it's really focused on kids. Her daughter and my daughter, same age, as they were in 8th grade, as they were in beginning high school, very shy. My daughter's really pretty. Never had a boyfriend. No one ever asked her out. Freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, nothing. And just sort of socially awkward, And my girlfriend's daughter, sort of the same way. Just one of those girls that, I have a son that, homecoming board, he's the dude, everywhere he goes, everyone loves him. My daughter's like, never happens for me. And so our friend's daughter, similar, exact same way of being, hears us speak all the time about be careful who you talk to, because if you're not one of those girls that's literally running away from your home, that's a whole other avenue. But a whole other form of coercion is what Noelle was speaking to in the social media. And we say all the time, like, don't disclose who you are online. Don't give too much information. Don't friend anyone that doesn't know you. So her daughter, when our girls were sophomores, she didn't tell anybody. We didn't find out until her senior year. But starting her sophomore year, without telling her mom, without telling anybody, girls never had a boyfriend, gets, friends a few people online, through Instagram or whatever, that she doesn't know. And they start direct messaging her. And then they start talking. And it went on. And what's so interesting doing this work is that a predator will groom a child a year and a half. They'll invest all day long. They don't care. They know if they get them. One guy said he made 19 grand a day off of a girl. If she looks young enough and innocent enough, 19 grand a day. And so her daughter started talking to this guy, started sending naked pictures, thought it was a boyfriend. She actually, later we found out, she thought she was in love. Never met him. A year and a half, never met him. But all of this, the way he was courting her and talking to her. And then the beginning of her senior year, that long, he said to her, you know what, it's time. She's like, time for what? And here she's like doing everything you could possibly do through the internet. And he said, we're going to run away together. She's like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. And he's like, yeah, no, you're ready. You're ready. It's time. And she's sort of excited and she's sort of like, ruh-roh, right? What's going to happen now? And he said, get your passport. You're going to meet me. We're going to Canada. And only then, because she was raised by somebody like me who drills this stuff into them, only then did she finally go, oh man, this might not be what I think it is. And so when she said to him, I think I made a mistake. I'm not going. I can't get my passport. He said, I know what your mom does. I have pictures of you. You want to ruin her reputation with what you've done? You're going to meet me. And she had the wisdom, thank God. Majority of the girls or boys don't though. But because raised with a drill sergeant like her mother, like her mom, mine, she went to her mom. Because she's heard us say, they will say they're going to threaten your family. They will say they know the path your little brother walks to school. And a girl's like, oh man, I can't let this happen to someone in my family. I'll just go. Better to have me go down than have something happen and ruin my mom or dad's career and have this happen to my little sister. And they will just go along through coercion out of fear. And her daughter came to her mom though and said, for a year and a half, I've been having. And we were able to save her, get her. She ended up having to come to Selah. Like she needed the trauma services of being in a psychologically controlling, abusive, with a man she never even met, almost took her out of the country. So I sort of say that story to set up Dr. Q because the methodology that these men will use, I mean, there are cases, like there's some cases, there's one in Chicago where a girl was chained to a bed and it was just man after man after man. Majority of the time there's no chains. It's psychological bondage. Anybody ever been in an abusive relationship, domestic violence, parent that was abusive, they love you, like that whole twisted thinking. These girls, they could walk out any day, the majority of them, but they love the guy. And they think it doesn't matter that he's sleeping with me and sleeping with her and making me sleep with 15 guys and making me get 5 more girls to recruit to bring in to have them sleep with 15 more guys. They don't know. So, we'll speak a little bit more later to what we do to restore and relaunch and do all that, but we couldn't even begin to offer the services that we give if their trauma is not cleared. You could grab a girl, you could rescue her, you could bring her here. If she does not get in order the proper trauma clearing services, she's not ready to get her GED. She can't even be in the room. Her mind, she wants to run back to the guy. There's just so many psychological things happening. So we are really fortunate to partner with Dr. Q, and he has counterparts here in Chicago that work with our teams, our Chicago homes here. And I just think it's fascinating. So I'm going to have him speak to you guys a bit about how the brain works and how we get stuck in trauma and what that looks like. And, you'll all be like, I want to go to Dr. Q. So, give him a round of applause, Dr. Q.
Okay, so thank you for that. And one, I want to acknowledge all of you for being here because it takes something to show up and hear about a topic that's not all too comfortable for people to talk about, right? Nobody likes to think that this is a real thing that's really happening in our area, but it is. So to give you a little background about me, I have a bachelor's in psychology, a master's in social work, and a PhD in all things clinical sexology. Because, for me, that's a topic that we have very limited education. It's a taboo, it's uncomfortable, and I think it's something that as people are exposed more, then we can do more to change things. So, how many of you have ever been angry? Anybody ever feel anxious? Stressed? Anybody ever feel overwhelmed? Anybody? Yeah. So I would say, and this is kind of an interesting thought, that all of us probably have at least a little bit of post-traumatic stress. Doesn't mean we have the disorder, but I don't think as a human being you can get born and go through the experiences we go through and not have at least a little bit of post-traumatic stress? I tend to ask this question when I'm with groups of mental health professionals. Well, I'll have them, not raise their hand, and I'll say, how many of you have been to a therapist in the past year? And of course, nobody wants to let anybody know. Because there's a stigma attached to mental health, right? We go to the doctor, we go to the dentist, but we don't go to deal with our brain, which is probably the most complicated machine that we have in our body. So I'd like to give you a way of understanding why troubling experiences can continue to haunt and how we're able to actually get that better. So what if the conventional wisdom of therapy actually got it wrong? What if the way that therapists were trained doesn't actually give them the skill set to get emotional things better? And I've got a really interesting thought. What if people are not troubled by the past experiences they went through because those experiences were awful, horrible, yucky, bad, shouldn't have happened, they shouldn't have done it? What if people are troubled because when they went through it, it short-circuited the more emotional part of their brain? So the key thing to begin to understand is people are not bothered by the things they went through because of how awful it was, but truly because there's an aspect of their brain that never got the good news that the negative experience is finished. That's the key thing. So therapists or other people tend to talk about processing. Let's talk about and get the bad feelings out. And after a good cry, don't you feel slightly better? But then you can get re-triggered by the same stuff. So what if people don't have emotions trapped inside of them? What if we don't need to get the bad feelings out? What if we're just going to cause a neural reset, really rewiring their brain, so that at that emotional level, the brain knows the negative experience is over? How many in here have ever heard the term neuroplasticity? Anybody ever hear that word? Neuroplasticity simply means that the brain has the ability to rewire itself. That everybody's brain is developed differently. That the experiences we go through in life literally cause physical changes within our brain. When I first started working with trafficking and other things, I thought, like Noelle did, that porn was a problem in one of two ways. One, it might give unrealistic expectations of, what sex is like, and then two, if it's happening and it's taking away the interest to be intimate with your partner. But what we've discovered is that, given that kids by the age 8, boys, are being exposed to it, that the exposure to it literally causes physical changes in their brain. Their brain begins to develop differently. So they don't have the same connections or how to treat women. That stuff is off. Same thing with any kind of trauma. It short circuits the emotional brain so it doesn't know it's over. Not only that, there's a secondary piece that happens with all trauma. And that is one of the messages that we're all taught, doesn't matter where we live or what culture we come from, but the messages we're all taught when we're little is that our parents, whether they're good or bad parents, want us to grow up to be good boys and good girls. Don't we get that message, right? That if you're a good boy and if you're a good girl, your life will be good, and then you'll get to live happily ever after. And the message is reinforced with TV, books, movies, stories, games. Everything geared towards children reinforce the message that good happens when you're being good. Fine, if everything in life is always good. By a show of hands, is there anybody in here at all that can say that everything in your life has always been good? Anybody? See, I never get anybody to raise their hand. Because we all go through yucky stuff. Some worse than others, but we all go through it. So the issue is that if we're telling people that life is good, and if you're good, your life will be good, then the meaning that gets attached to any negative experience is it's my fault. I shouldn't have done it. Or better yet, maybe it's because I'm not good enough, or I'm unlovable. Or maybe I'm not smart enough, or pretty enough, or tall enough. That there's something wrong with me, that's why the bad thing happened. So the problem with trauma is that it's coded in the brain so that part doesn't know that it's over. Second thing, a meaning gets attached to it, which makes me feel worse. How many of you in here would be surprised, shocked, if, let's say, this 24-year-old who had gone out with her friends and she was out at a bar and she met a nice guy and they had a conversation, he bought her a drink, he slipped something in it, and then he, did yucky stuff to her. How many of you would be surprised or shocked if she were to blame herself? Anybody? Right? Like it was my fault, I should have known better, I should have been paying more attention, I shouldn't have had that drink. See, nothing that happened was her fault. She didn't have a sign on her back that said, please do that to me. Nothing she said or nothing she did was wrong. But because the bad thing happened to her, that was the meaning that got attached to it. Does that make sense? You guys are following me with that, right? So once the troubling experience is stuck, the meaning gets attached to it, guess what our mind is going to do? It's going to have what we call a negativity bias. And what does that mean? Well, we're all pre-programmed first for survival. Make sense? We're driving down the road, a bug splats the windshield, my brain closes my eyes. I didn't decide to do it. So we're all pre-programmed first for survival. Therefore, we remember negative things more intensely than positive things. And if it was really yucky, my brain is going to be on both a vigilant and sensitive mode, searching for anything that might be similar to anything that was painful. The reason is, the sooner I react to threat in an animal world, the more apt I am to survive it. For example, a rabbit that hears a twig snap and takes off. That one survived. The one that heard the twig snap and thought it was his buddy George, that one's not around anymore, right? So our brain is pre-programmed to remember negative more intensely. If there are those active wounds, then our brain is going to be scanning for anything that's similar, and it confuses similar as same. So the soldier dives on the ground when the firework goes pop in the air, but not because he doesn't know it's the 4th of July. And it's not because he didn't know he was at a fireworks celebration. Heck, he's the guy that lit the firework. It's because at a deeper level, the emotional brain confused the sound, thinking it was the mortar and the grenade. So the coolest thing that we've discovered in working with people is that it's never about processing or trying to get the bad feelings out. What we've discovered is that in a painless way, we can literally unplug the memory and rewire the brain. What neuroscience has taught us is that when a memory moves from the long-term stores into the present moment, it's as moldable and malleable as it was when it was first made. So we can literally change the structure of how the memory got coded, and therefore no longer troubling for the person. So the issues of anger and hurt and pain, the issues of esteem and worth and lovability, all of that stuff gets to be resolved. I remember not that long ago working with one of the survivors at Selah, and she was telling me that she had so much disgust and self-hate for both the stuff that happened to her and the stuff that she did. That she totally couldn't even be okay with herself. And as we were going through the trauma resolution process, and in a painless way, those memories of the yucky stuff were getting cleared, unplugged so she was no longer bothered by it. We get to the end of the process, and she's sitting there, and she's quiet, and she's peaceful, and she says to me, I'm not hurting anymore over all the stuff that happened. I said, yeah, I know. And she says, I don't even feel any of it anymore. I go, I know. And then she says, and I don't hate me. And I'm not even mad at them. All that pain lifted and gone. Now, what might sound not believable is that we can actually get that done in a painless way and in just a few hours. That's the difference. When you know how to work with the brain, when you understand why the negative experience is still active, you can literally unplug it and rewire the brain. It's one of the most forefront things that we're learning from neuroscience is that our brain is able to be rewired. Any questions about that? Anything that I can elaborate on what I've talked about so far? Yes, please.
Is this done with medication or just talk?
Yeah, so it's not a medication-based process. It's going to be talking, but the talking is going to be both to the conscious and more unconscious part of the mind, or better yet, the body. So I'll give you a thought on that. Our bodies, meaning our physiology, is always in now. We can't be anywhere other than now. Our thoughts can be in now. Our emotions can be in now. But our thoughts and emotions can also be in the past and can also be about the future. So the problem when a trauma is stuck is that if I'm thinking about it and I'm going to have all of the emotions of it, I'll be feeling all of it now. So one of the ways to unplug the memory is to actually keep the person emotionally present when they remember it. That's the first step that begins to unplug the memory so that they're not activated. And where it really changes for people is at that deeper, more emotional level. How many of you in here can know better? Let's say the gal is 42 and at 12 her uncle did yucky stuff to her. Now at 42 she knows, where she's logical and bright, that it's over. That it wasn't her fault. That all she did was go out to the barn to see what uncle was working on in the barn. She knows that some of what her uncle did to her felt good, but not because she wanted it, not because she was interested, but because the body part touched in that way is designed to feel good. She knows it all up here. Why does she still have all the guilt, anger, hurt, and pain? It's because emotionally, her brain never got that negative thing stopped. So we've developed a very useful process that's able to unplug the memory so the person's no longer bothered by it. Yeah, other questions? Yes, please.
How long does it take for a person to actually get to that point of being open to talk about it and recover from it?
Very good question, and I'll repeat it. So the question was, how long does it take for the person to be open and then recover from it? So frequently in the setting that I do, I might meet with somebody for an hour the first time to explain the process and kind of get an understanding more about how their brain works and what's been going on. Second piece you want to understand, different than therapy. Therapy tends to be very much a client-driven approach, meaning us therapists think that it's the client's job to get themselves better, and that we're there as a guide to support and encourage, but the responsibility is on the client. With this process, it's very much a therapist-driven approach, meaning it's the therapist's job to get it better for the client. We kind of figure if the client knew how to get that stuff better, they wouldn't be talking to us. There's a lot of other things you can do rather than hang out with us, right? How many of you have been to a dental hygienist? And when you go, does she just hold the mirror and you do the scraping? Or does she do all the work? Right, she does all the work. Same thing with this kind of therapy. So I might meet with somebody for about an hour, and then maybe a 2.5 to 3 hour process is going to take care of, decades of like horrific stuff that's been troubling so that they're not bothered. And then we'll do a follow-up appointment several weeks after to make sure that everything's good for them. So not a long period of time, and not a lot of waiting in terms of getting it better. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
What about when there's drug addiction involved? Does that have to be solved first before you?
It's a good question. So the question was, what if there's drug addiction involved? So locally down in Sarasota, I also go and do a monthly visit at a drug treatment center. And certainly it's going to make treatment easier when somebody's got a little bit of time being clean and sober. I don't recommend working with somebody who's actively using. But if they've had a break from it for a period of time, you can really make a difference with that. And what we've learned in dealing with trauma is that it's really hard for somebody to be in complete recovery if that underneath trauma hasn't been taken care of. Because that's the thing that keeps getting reactivated that triggers them to want to use. So having a brief window away from it is going to make the treatment much more successful. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, please. Yeah, so the question was, does it work just for physical or sexual abuse, or does it also work for more psychological stuff, what's been said, verbal? And yes, so it doesn't matter whether it was a physical thing that happened to the body, or it was an emotional thing that got drilled in. Lots of people might have esteem issues and didn't have anything physical happen to them. But it had to do with, what was told to them as a child, or you're never going to be good enough, or you're just not smart, or those messages that people say, and yeah, we can get that stuff cleared up so the person feels a lot better. Yeah. Other questions? Well, cool. So I'm going to bring it back to Elizabeth. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I'll certainly be here afterwards and answer any other questions. Thank you.
So I brought him here not only because it's an amazing education, and I have my master's in clinical psychology. I could talk to you about your problems. I did counseling for years. I can't clear your trauma. When I first heard about him, I'd heard about him before we started Selah, and I was like, please, that sounds too good to be true. And then after Selah started, he invited me to speak to the National Association of Social Workers, and he said, I really think I could help your girls. And I said, try it on me pro bono. He's like, do you have any trauma? I'm like, do I have trauma? We all have trauma, right? And it's remarkable. And so that's something that, just for any of you, we have resources. You could give us your information. You could contact us. We'll give you our information. It's just a gift for yourselves, for your family, that is so non-traditional. And it's sort of a good segue into just telling you what we do now at Selah Freedom. And I'm going to have them come up and join me in a little bit, and we're going to show you a video in a few minutes here. But the girls that we get, some of them have been left for dead in garbage bags. Some have been scalped. We show up, and law enforcement that has us come get girls that they've rescued, but it's a mess. It's a mess. Physically, emotionally, the rapes, and all of my staff has our master's degree, but getting them into assessment, and now you said, how long does it take for someone's comfortable to talk about this stuff? Research shows that with any type of chronic abuse, it takes 7 to 8 points of intervention before a person will even be open to receiving help. You might get them to trust you a teeny bit, but that's why our program, we have so many touch points. We have an outreach team. We're on the street. We're in the jails. We're in the courts. We have an assessment home. They come there first. they could leave, revolving door. But if they're ready and they make it through 2 to 4 weeks in assessment, they get to come to our main campus where it's 1 year before the first level of graduation. And when they come there, they get everything in the world given back to them. Because you gotta remember, a child that's been abused since they were 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, been on the street since they were 12, 13 years old, been raped every day up to 25, 40 times, they missed a lot. So the beauty of our program is we bring Dr. Q's specialty, and we have partners in Chicago that do the same type of trauma clearing that are right here. And they get them clear so they can start to even hear what we have to offer. You can't even receive something if your brain is in fight or flight mode, you know? So to get a girl clear and then introduce her to what we have. So what I want to do is show you our video, and it just sort of really sets up Selah Freedom and what we offer. And then we'll talk a little bit more. We'll all come up here together and just sort of close out a few different areas, and then just let you guys ask questions about anything you have. But I want to share about, because what's really cool is Chicago being a top 5 market, and with the shooting and the work that you do is all remarkable. Like, there's so much happening here on the ground, and it all goes hand in hand. You know, kids are being raised without their parents. You know, boys at 14 are trying to figure out how to be a man. All they see is the gang around the corner, or there's no dad there, so they copy what they see. And it's all lost identities and lost roles that they should have been given and mentored in. And all of us bringing the pieces we do together gets everyone to the resources they need. And so we are bringing what Sheriff Dart's office said was, we're so excited you're here. Same thing FBI said, because we want to turn Chicago from being a top 5 city into the solution center of the nation. Like, Chicago, this is our city, right? We should be a leader in the best possible turnaround and saving of these girls and the young boys that are out there. So this is a little look into our program, and then we'll all talk a little bit more.
I used to cry myself to sleep at night. I thought I would never be able to get away from my stepdad's abuse. I felt like no one understood me. I was nervous all day at school because I knew that he was just waiting for me at home. I ended up on the streets when I was 13. I had to run away. It was my only way out, the only way I'd ever get away from him. An older guy found me about 2 days after I had left home. He told me he would take care of me, that he loved me, and I believed him. What was love anyway? The only kind of love I'd ever known just left me feeling used and hurt. Eventually, he started selling me to his friends and other guys online. And I believed that was all I was worth. Until Selah Freedom found me. But since being here, in the first same home I've ever known, I realized what true love is. Love gives you a listening ear. Love gives you a family to belong to. It gives you the strength you need to believe in yourself. It tells you are smart, unique, valued. But most of all, the love I found at Selah Freedom has given me a new beginning. And I never have to be sold or used ever again.
do, it's pretty remarkable. We've been identified as bringing the best standards of outcomes and measurements in partnering with the rescue, but truly, oh, the other mic, thank you so much. Being a partner in the restoration and the relaunch. And we do that. I mean, of our girls that come to our program, those that come in and commit to living with us and doing the 1 year and then go on for another 1 to 3 years if they want in our graduate program, 75% of them go to college. 75% of them do not return to the streets. 99% get their GED. And they come to us thinking they're stupid. One girl said, I was told by 3rd grade that I was stupid and I couldn't learn. And all she had said she could think about was, I have to go home and I know what's waiting for me tonight. And so when they come and they get the resources of like an army fighting for them, they get horse therapy, puppy therapy, art therapy, trauma clearing. It's remarkable. But we do other programs as well. So I'm going to let Noelle say a few words about our teen prevention, what that looks like, because we'd love to launch teen prevention in this area and be happy to come back and do any of that and speak to outreach.
Yeah, so Elizabeth mentioned our residential program. You guys are kind of sitting in our awareness program where we speak to communities about what's going on. Our teen prevention program, we're going to be launching this in Chicago soon, and I'm so excited about it because if you can speak, kind of as I was speaking to you earlier about how to be aware, how to know what's going on to a teen, somebody who's 12, 13, 14 years old, and you give them that piece that says, oh, I know what's going on, then you can actually, essentially prevent them from being caught up in this issue. And Elizabeth has told a story where we have, our girls, and it's a group of 10 girls, and in leading that group is both, somebody who's leading the group paired up with actually a survivor who's telling these girls her story. And they ask the question, what does a pimp look like? These girls are like, oh, he's really scary, and he kind of looks like, has a gold tooth, or, his arms all tatted up. And like, okay, yeah, like he might look like that. And as these girls start to hear the stories and become aware, we ask that question again. We say, what does that pimp look like? And the girls actually are like, well, I think it actually looks a lot more like my brother or my cousin or the guy down the block who, is selling these girls. Or it looks like, they start to think in terms of what's near to them, their community, and be able to identify who they know that is actually, creating a risk for them in their life. And, some girls will say, hey, I actually realized that my brother, he has a girlfriend, but he actually makes money off of selling her to his friends. And so these girls are then empowered to be able to say, hey, like, that's actually not going to be me, and I'm actually going to get to go after the things that I dream about instead of falling into kind of that pattern that normally would be really easy. So we're setting up these teen prevention programs, and it's 10 girls, and sometimes these are in schools with girls who are, considered to be at risk. And we're hoping and planning to set these up, across the area. It could be in Berwyn, it could be in the city, it could be in the suburbs, wherever there's a need. We're hoping to get in there. And then we also have our outreach program, which kind of, connects with our teen prevention. We're in the jails, we're on the ground, connecting with women who are either currently being trafficked and able to come connect with them, or maybe that's in their past and now they're seeking help from other services. We're connecting with law enforcement, that when they find these girls, they know who to call. We were talking to the state's attorney's office last weekend, and I sat down, and I'd never met these guys. I'm like, oh, you work for the state's attorney's office? And they said, you work for Selah. They go, we really, really appreciate what you're doing. And I was like, okay, cool, yeah, awesome. And they say, no, you guys are the ones that when it's inconvenient and it's the middle of the night and we have a girl who we just arrested but she needs a place to go, like, we know we can call you because you'll pick up the phone. You'll fly her where she needs to go. You'll get her help. And they're saying we know that we can trust you. And so our amazing outreach team has built those relationships so that when, law enforcement has somebody and they say, we don't actually want to look at this girl as a prostitute or a criminal. We want to see her for what she is, which is a victim and a survivor. be there when they call and get her the help that she needs. So, in effect.
Yeah. And you know what? We have a phone number. Our phone number is 888-8-FREE-ME. So some of you might be sitting here and you might be thinking, you know what, I wonder if this is what's going on with my niece. Or I wonder if this is what's going on with, so-and-so. Or you might say, I see something every day when I drive by this certain area and I don't think it's right. Like, you could just call our number and just share what you're thinking, what you're seeing, and then you have someone to process with. And Selah itself is a Hebrew word. It means to rest, to pause, to reflect. Because so often people come out of this abuse cycle. That's what we do. They've been abused their entire life. They've never had a chance to pause and understand that they were made for freedom. They were made for more. We walk them into freedom. And so Dr. Q, we started launching, we have the Sex, Lies, and Media for parents, and we launched these freedom events too, where he'll come and he'll do group sessions, and he's talking about doing them over video to make them more available, to give everybody the opportunity to have the clearing of things they need to clear in their life. Because the truth is, the more clear you are, the better you can see. Because I don't know you've ever heard the saying, beat it or repeat it, and generationally, someone that's been sexually abused will raise a daughter that'll be sexually abused, and until somebody owns it and beats it and claims it and says, no more, not on my watch, it tends to repeat. And so the gift of hearing what we're saying, being comfortable with what we're saying, but knowing I could bury it and risk my daughter or granddaughter running away from something that I'm not comfortable talking about and heading into what we've described, having to come into all of our services. Not to mention the charges that they accumulate, and then they have to get expunged through the system, what we have to do to get them into college, and or you could take a risk and sign up for a freedom event. You could be willing. So what we want to do, we're going to let you have lots of questions, whatever you want, if there's anything you want to say or learn. But Dr. Q is going to give you guys a little taste of freedom today. He does this really cool exercise. It's 5 minutes. But it gives you a taste of what he does. And so I'm going to let him do that. Sort of close there, and we'll talk about more.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so there's something that we can do that literally uses brain-based leverage points. So they're literally levers in the brain that are able to bypass the fight, freeze, and flight responses in our body. And it winds up being a very useful thing that you can take with you and leave. So the first thing that you want to do is not the worst experience, but think of something that you've got in life that's, somewhat troubling or stressful, or that when you think about it, it still kind of bothers you. Again, not the worst, but just something little. So everybody take a few moments and just kind of think of something that, as you think about that, it still kind of has a little bit of a negative charge. Got it? Yeah? And second then, is if that was no longer an issue, meaning you no longer had that kind of feeling, it no longer bothered you in that way, how would you actually be? How would you be as a person with that no longer kind of upsetting or rubbing you the wrong way? Some people might think of being more free or light or clear or maybe a little more easygoing. And then let me teach you the little process. So the first process is we're going to stimulate the vagal nerve. Vagal nerve is very key in bypassing fear. And how you stimulate your vagal nerve is you simply slightly lower your jaw. So it's not a full drop but it's just slightly lowering your jaw, just maybe about the width of your index finger. So go ahead and slightly lower your jaw. Second step is we're going to do another piece, which is you're going to rest your tongue at the bottom of your mouth. When you rest your tongue at the bottom of your mouth, it does two things. One, it begins to cause a satiated feeling. And two, it also begins to turn down internal dialogue. How many of us have that kind of negative, critical internal thing that goes, right? Yeah, a few of us. Yeah. So we lower our jaw slightly, you rest your tongue at the bottom of your mouth, and then you begin to breathe in a way that's a little bit slower and a little bit deeper than how you automatically breathe. And when you breathe in a way that's a little slower and a little bit deeper, it begins to move you into parasympathetic response. So we lower our jaw, we rest our tongue at the bottom of our mouth, and then you begin to breathe in a way that's a little bit slower and a little bit deeper than how you automatically breathe. Doesn't matter whether you're doing it through your nose or through your mouth, but as you're doing that now, what do you notice in terms of how your body's feel? Anybody feel a little more calm or relaxed? Yeah? Yeah. Come. So we lower our jaw, we rest our tongue, we breathe in a way that's a little slower and deeper. The next step is that we're going to be moving from what we call foveal vision, which is focused vision, to more expanded awareness. So go ahead and look at me. You can kind of look at my nose, it's pretty big, you can see it. Right? And if you just look at me, notice what happens as you focus in on me. And then notice what happens when you allow your awareness to expand in the periphery. So that you can see me, but you kind of pick up more of the space that moves out towards the sides of the room. And as you're noticing more of the space, you can also begin to notice the space in between you and me, and even the space behind me. You can begin to notice the space below you, and all of the space up above you towards the ceiling. And even begin to notice the space behind you. And as you're noticing more of the space, it's going to begin to put your body into a more relaxed, but also alert state. And then the last little piece for this process, lower your jaw, rest your tongue at the bottom of your mouth, breathe in a way that's a little bit slower, slightly deeper than how you normally breathe. Focus in on an object, and then begin to allow your awareness to expand out, so that you can notice more of the space. And you might even begin to realize that no matter how many objects are in this room, there's so much more space. And then just for a moment, if you would, close your eyes and imagine what it might be like if you were a bird way up in the sky. And as a bird is able to soar and fly and glide through the sky, making big, wide turns and curves, big arching angles, soaring, gliding, moving freely with that expansive space, seeing what's down below as being so much smaller, moving and soaring and gliding. And then bring your awareness back down and into your body. Take a slow and deep breath in, and then exhale, and open your eyes. And just check again, how's your body feeling now? Anyone? Relaxed? More calm? And as your body's feeling more calm and relaxed, think about that thing that was somewhat troubling. And what do you notice now? In terms of how you feel about it. Anybody notice a shift? Yeah. So that process of getting up above, has anybody ever heard or said, I'm under a lot of stress? Anybody ever say that? Yeah? So if you're under a lot of stress, where does stress have to be? Right? If representationally, stress has to be above me if I'm under it. So the process of getting up above something and being able to soar and glide like a bird, the worst moment in the freeze response is when I don't feel I can move and the predator is stalking. So by getting up above it, we get ourselves out from under the stress. We get way up above it, we're able to see it way down below. It activates all of those brain-based leverage points and puts your body and brain in an optimal state to deal with stressors. So that's the little process. I'll just say it one more time. Lower your jaw slightly. You rest your tongue at the bottom of your mouth. Breathe in a way that's a little bit slower and a little bit deeper than how you normally breathe. Allow your awareness to move from a focused vision to more expanded awareness so that you can pick up more of the space all around you, out in all ways, in all directions. And then briefly close your eyes and imagine what it's like to be a bird way up above, able to soar and glide. And again, with stressful situations, doing that small, short little exercise is going to put your body in a more optimal state. Make sense? Any questions about that? Cool. Well, any other questions that you guys might have for us as we're coming back up now?
Yeah.
Yes, please. So the question is, we've been talking a lot about girls. Do we ever take in boys, and does this happen with boys? So the answer is yes. Statistically, it's 1 out of every 5 boys have had some form of sexual violence. This organization doesn't do stuff specifically with boys. I've worked frequently with guys that have had all sorts of yucky stuff happen as well.
Yeah. In the city of Chicago, there's a program called Emmaus. They work with boys, and one of the things that is often said about boys is it's harder to get a boy to come in because there's all this immediate identification that I must be gay, and then it's harder to come forward. But we are, specifically working with females, but we do a team prevention, it's male and female.
And just on that, we get a lot of questions. You guys talk a lot about girls, and isn't this an issue with guys? And it is definitely an issue with guys. It just often really looks different. For girls, you often see where there's a pimp and a girl who's being trafficked by that person. For most of the time, guys who are caught in sex trafficking, it's something called survival sex. It's where they're maybe a runaway, or they're homeless, or they have been abused at home and they're trying to leave that situation, and it's just their only way of survival to get food and a place to sleep. But there's less often somebody controlling them from the top down. And so that's why our program focuses specifically on girls. Is our program is geared towards helping that girl's story, and it takes kind of a separate programming to come at it from the other side.
Yes, it's a need.
Thank you. Yes, please.
When we were launching our housing program, we thought we were going to serve children, and what law enforcement and state's attorney said was, can you please serve 18 plus? The 18 to 26-year-olds are who nobody wants. There's no place to put them. And so we did, because we were like, man, we thought we were going to serve kids. But our housing is for 18 and older, 18 to 26, 27, because they have been out there the entire time, and when they come to us, they're developmentally like a 12-year-old, and everything has to be given back to them. And there is a program in Chicago, a couple that do house children, and we came to fill the niche of the need of the 18 to 26, 27-year-old. There was a question.
In terms of one just quick thing, in terms of trauma resolution, kids can be as young as 3. Thank you.
So what are some very practical, easy next steps for you as parents to prevent your children being victimized and become a victim of sex trafficking, either through social media or just through... I just did a talk in Chicago, a TED Talk, and a moderator had me come, and she had me run through, and it was sort of what I said, sex trafficking is one single root cause in America, and it is preventable. And the first time she heard me talk, she was like, man, when you talk, I don't know, I just feel like there's some stuff going through my mind. It's a mom, right? And when I came back to the next practice, practice. She goes, you know what, I don't know why, but your talk, I keep hearing 1 out of 3 girls, 1 out of 3 girls, 1 out of 3 girls, and I'm thinking, what is she saying? And then, when I literally came to do the talk, she said, Elizabeth, I gotta talk to you as soon as this is done. I'm like, okay. And when it was all over, she said, when you came for your final dress rehearsal, it was like all of a sudden blinders were lifted. You were talking and you were saying what you always say, but all of a sudden I was like, my 4-year-old's being abused, I know it. I know my 4-year-old's being abused, and this is why I asked this lady to talk. And that's why she's been wetting her bed at night, that's why this, and just all of a sudden she was willing to think about it and look. And she said the night that I did that talk, she invited the guy that she thought was abusing her daughter to come. So when everybody stood up to applaud, she turned to her brother-in-law and said, I know you're molesting my daughter and I will press charges. So what we always say is talk about it and talk about it and talk about it and then talk about it some more. You know, you can't say it enough. Like, look at my friend's daughter. We talk about it like I'm crazy lady. My kid's like, no, mom, didn't get raped today. Had a good day at school. You know, like they think I'm nuts. But I'm always trying to drill it in. So I would just say to them, hey, you know, talk about touch, talk about this. And I know you guys have other tips and things that you would use.
What she's saying is, I think the most key thing is to open up the dialogue and talk, educate. I mean, we have such a taboo when it comes to talking about anything that has to do with sex in our country, that if you can begin to expose it, talk about it, normalize, empower that it's my body, empower that touch doesn't happen unless it's for like cleaning purposes. Like, you know, we want people to be empowered to own their own bodies.
When they're little, just the bathing suit talk. Anywhere you have a bathing suit, no one needs to touch you there. You know, it's mom, you know, hopefully you're a safe mom, right? Safe to, daddy doesn't need to touch you there, but a doctor and mom will be in the room, you know? So just letting them know what are the boundaries. A lot of kids, I mean, I know I've been very close to a lot of people that it started so young they didn't even know it was starting. You know, so to talk, we got asked to speak to a group of 1st through 3rd graders. And we're like, okay, you know, we just bring our message anywhere and you make it simple and you talk about it and you know, what's okay, what's not okay, what touch is okay, what's not okay, and what secrets are not okay to keep. And man, we're going to come out here today not holding on to any secrets. Who has something they want to share? And this little girl goes, what if I'm afraid to share? And there's intervention. So we don't give a platform. Everyone's like, oh, we don't want you to talk about it. You know, you come to our high school group. I'm like, by the time I get to your high school group, they've been raped for 10 years. Like, give me a break. Get me in with your little guys. Get me with your kindergartners, your 1st graders, you know? So it is getting the taboo lifted. Just talk about touch and secrets. Secrets will kill you.
And I'll just say with your older students, creating a conversation environment where, you know, when young people see you comfortable talking about situations or, you know, what's appropriate or not, they suddenly get the cue in their brain that it's okay for them to talk about it. And so especially in families or communities, being able to say, you know, talking about what's good and what's not, and allowing young people to kind of bring up what they're experiencing and being able to say it, is what Elizabeth is saying about learning that secret-keeping ability at a young age is really what creates a foundation for a lot of this to be able to happen. And when that ability to keep a secret or that need to keep a secret because of shame disappears, then suddenly there's no foundation for this, you know, pattern to build on.
Thank you.
I'd like to add a little bit, as I was a principal who received phone calls from protected and children charged with child pornography.
Can everybody hear
From a
her?
parent's point of view, it's really important.
Can you come up and grab a mic? This is the principal, and I think it'd be great. Let's run that.
Yeah.
Oh, you got that.
Keep going forward. I was just saying that from an educator's point of view, I think for parents, it's really important to pay attention, because I was in a situation where I had to work with a detective and a couple of my students got charged with child pornography from Snapchat. Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook are for 14-year-olds and older. So if you're a parent who's feeling pressured by your children to get those apps, pay attention and really monitor
restrictions on them because children don't know their brain function and understand where to draw the line. So pay attention, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Paying attention and being okay with setting, boundaries on your kids' phones of what can and cannot, and putting restrictions on. There's a lot of tools out there.
We're asked often, well, I don't want to invade my kids' privacy, and it's their phone. Am I going to pay for it? Privacy, you might be saving their life. Like, there are restrictions intentionally, and Verizon just came out, or Xfinity just came out with one that you could literally pick a time at night if 8 o'clock is your homework time, you know kids can't focus anymore. I can barely focus anymore with iPhones, right? You could shut down the power on their phone from 8 to 9:30 because that's your designated homework time. They've now put that in place. Like, they're trying to get ahead of it, and you just have to take their phone, approve that you're adding this whole filter from Xfinity or cable companies, and then you have control. Like, hey, guess what? For an hour and a half, your phone is just immobilized. You're going to do homework. They'll hate it, but you're the parent. I'm always like, we're the parents. What the heck? We're paying for this stuff, and then we're the ones that if something happens, we blame ourselves. So just get tough, man. We're in charge.
That's right, parents, and it's controlled choices. We're still having them be able to choose, but it's kind of under the guidance because somebody's got to take more responsibility and somebody's going to know more, and we're hoping it's parents. So it's still their choices, but it's more controlled choices.
And what we like to close on, do you have a question right there? Okay, you're just stretching. All right, I'm going to say one thing before I take that. Oh, no, go ahead.
You mentioned a program launching in Chicago, where and when?
Are you talking about the teen prevention? The teen prevention, if there is a need and there's a group, we'll come and do it now. We're ready to roll. So you get our card, you contact us. So that's perfect. So here's what I'm going to say. We close on this every time. This is how we close. People are like, what can I do? I want to have that piece. I want this. I want that. So we always say there's 3 things. Raise your hand, raise your voice, raise your resources. Raise your hand means we need volunteers. We need help in all kinds of ways, spreading awareness. Maybe you have, like, you heard this message and you're like, man, I have this crazy circle of influence, and they could probably put some money behind this, or they could probably get together some bunch of educators that I could educate. I can get all law enforcement together, come and train them, and let me come and use my influence to help you. Raise your voice. Maybe you want to be trained up to be a speaker. Maybe you want to be trained up to be part of our teen prevention team. Then we have someone right here on the ground that we can train, and you can help lead groups, and we'll bring a survivor in to co-lead those groups with you. So there's all kinds of ways to get involved, and having awareness parties helps us spread this message. Having another group, your church wants us to come, there's another organization that you're part of, we just want to spread the message, because you never know what's getting freed when we speak. And then resources, financially, a group is $2,500 for a whole group of teens to go through this 6 to 8 week group. We have some already funded, we're ready to go, but anybody that has that ability financially to help fund more, always needed. We need more homes. People are so surprisingly able to gift homes, and they call, and like today we had one of these earlier, and at the end of it, someone's like, I think my friend has a 6-bedroom house, they need to gift it, I'm going to tell them to gift it to you. So you just don't know who's in your circle of influence. There's so much need, so we just want to ask you, like we said, Selah means pause, rest, and reflect. We shared a lot of information tonight. Like, let it filter in, give us your email address if you want us to stay in touch, or take our contact info, and then contact us, and let's take the next step together. So we're super grateful for you guys, and thank you for having us, and thank you to the amazing Berwyn Police Department.
I'd like to thank everybody for being here this evening, and especially for Ms. Elizabeth Fisher, Noelle, and Dr. Q. Please, if you find it in your heart, if you want to contribute financially, or as Elizabeth said, it's donating your time, please help yourself to the information at the back of the table. This topic, when I considered it and I brought it up to our other administrators, it was a little bit dicey. And as Dr. Q said, sex is like a bad word. Last year in 2016, the Berwyn Police Department investigated 130 missing kids. Those were kids missing in our town. Fortunately, all those kids were recovered or or they return on their own. But unfortunately, a couple of our young girls fell victim into this trap of trafficking. We handle, on an average, probably a half a dozen to 10 allegations of criminal sexual abuse to our children. And especially in your schools, it's a law, Aaron's Law, where they have to talk to our kids about good touch, bad touch. We always know when those conversations are going on in the schools because educators are mandated reporters, like police departments. They report it to the Department of Children and Family Services, and that's when we get a spike of calls. So all these cases we have to investigate. Some are dead end. Fortunately, there's no truth to the allegations, but some are substantiated, and we proceed with criminal charges against the perpetrators. Talk to your kids, talk to your school principals, get programs in, such as this teen outreach program, and let's be the first in this surrounding area to make a difference. Again, on behalf of Chief Michael Smaglia, I'm Frank Smaglia, no relation. Mayor Livero, who truly wishes he could have been here tonight, and the whole entire Berwyn Police Department, thank you very much for your time. We'll see you in April with another presentation, and then our big one in October. Actually, I believe Josh McMahon, the principal, just, he's in the back. Again, I want to thank Josh and the Morton School District for allowing us to use this venue. I wish there was 10 times as many people here. We got great response on Facebook. Wayne, I think we had, about 600? And Elizabeth, this did give us permission. Wayne will clean this whole presentation up. It's going to be posted on our YouTube site and our Facebook, and we'll pull stills off of it, and we'll give it to Elizabeth, and we'll get that word out, and let's make a note for Berwyn, okay? Okay, again, thank you very much. Drive safely home.